Hello, and welcome to the curtain. Welcome to the Chronic Noob. Sorry, my curtain was bugging me. I had to fix it real quick. Welcome to the Chronic Noob. I'm Naomi. Glad you're here. Um, this is the Chronic Noob because I am a chronic noob. I'm always learning things that I should already know, but somehow didn't. So if you are like me and constantly finding out things you probably should have already known, then you're in the right place. With me tonight is Jason Todd, two-time Grammy winner and business extraordinaire. Just kidding. Just kidding. He's awesome, though. He is the founder of the Thinker Growth Community, a community where entrepreneurs can come together and find support and growth and have a faith-based community that supports them as they grow. Without further ado, here's Jason.
Naomi, that is a fantastic intro. I've never seen that intro before. That's great because you didn't have that last time.
It was the curtain thing, huh? It was all about the curtain. It was all the curtain. The curtain did all the work. I promise.
You didn't have it before the last time I was on. I really like that. That fits you so well.
It does. Okay, good. I made it myself on Canva. Brought to you by Canva. And there's also credits for the music in the description of the video, just to cover my bun. Oh. Yeah, I got a copyright strike on that last time.
Oh,
yeah. Whoops. So yeah, today we're here to talk about. Well, first of all, thank you for being here. I really appreciate it. We were talking the other day, and we had talked about. I've been wanting to do one on this for a while because I think projection can make or break us a lot of the time. And and then it came up in one of our conversations. I was like, dude, it'd be because I had recorded it solo and it wasn't. It needs to be a conversation, not a monologue. So I appreciate you being here because I think you'd get projection. I kind of wanted to go in. I really wanted to hone in, first of all, on when you think of projection as far as making or breaking someone when it comes to success or failure, what comes to your mind?
So to clarify, for me, for this idea of projection, when you're thinking about projection, what's your definition of projection? I want to make sure I have the same definition.
I think of projection, like my definition, what I'm talking about here is projection, like going off of the phrase, when someone treats you poorly, it's because it's a projection of how they're feeling about themselves. Like when people project their idea onto another person. And then also their idea onto, and how that can make or break somebody in relationships, in business, in personal life, for their success and for their failure.
Yeah, that's a big deal. I think number one, the first thing that comes to my mind, like what you talk about with relationships, many times we find ourselves in situations that we assume the other person has the same thought processes, same background, same understanding, same definitions that we have, and therefore must be coming to the same conclusions. And if they came to those conclusions, then the actions they just took must mean the same thing they would have meant if we took those actions, when in fact that's rarely true. And I think one of the examples that I have from my life is from relationships. If you said the word love, when I think of love, I think of my parents. My parents were young high school sweethearts. They ended up getting married and have been married now for 50 something years. And their love for each other has, when I think of that there are countless numbers of examples that I can point to that was like, oh, that's love. Likewise, their love for us as kids, I can go, oh, that was love. When they were disciplining us, that was love. They had our best interests in mind. And yet I've met so many people who, if they were to think of love, they only knew mom at home. And when mom was quote unquote disciplining, no, actually she was beating up on the kids. And this idea of, well, mom has their best interest in mind. No, mom was a druggie and an alcoholic. And so there's no such thing as best interest. I always had to look out for myself. I have no paradigm at all. There's nothing on my map of life that would equate any of those actions to love. I would say that's unloving. And so when 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 we use certain words, I naturally project onto the other my own understanding. They naturally project onto me their understanding. And in some ways, in that example, that can't be. It almost can't be helped. It's just so natural, uh, which is why, like even tonight, I say, okay, what do you mean by projection? We got to get to a definition. Are we sharing the same definitions? Because if we're not sharing the same definitions, I guarantee you we're not
There's
sharing.
going to be a, yeah, right. Have you, when I talk about projection as far as like success, what comes to your, or like failure in business and like a business relationship, how would you see that manifesting for success or failure?
Well, it's actually manifesting right now in a handful of people around me.
Oh.
I'm because, and here's how it comes out. Uh, the words, the words that we speak to ourselves,
Mhm.
how we speak to ourselves, I think is a matter of projection. So when we speak to ourselves and say, well, nothing works out for me and everything's a challenge and I can't get ahead and all these other things, it's like, okay, well, if that's the way you see things, that's what you're creating. That's the reality that you see. And you tend to recreate that because that's what you know how to recreate. You keep telling it, you keep saying that.
Mhm.
Whereas if you say, you know what, there's just stuff that happens, but I am, here's who I know me to be. Because if we talk, uh, I don't want to get too personal here, but I know for me, it's going to be okay. I'm going to figure it out. I have a deep abiding faith and I know that things are working together for good in some way that I am not yet aware of, and I'll hang my hat on that. Other people without that, or who that's not their kind of ever present thought, and I know
Mhm.
at times in my mind, it's not been my ever present thought. I've got wrapped up in all sorts of negative self-talk. And sure enough, it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. It's like, oh, things are dark and dim and never going to get better. Well, things are dark and dim and never going to get better. Repeat that long enough and you're going to believe it. Whereas if you say, you know what, they're probably not conspiring against me. They don't even know me. Like
Right.
they looked at me sideways. Well, if I think everything's dark, dim, and terrible, and everybody's out to get me, every sideways look is going to be either out to get me,
Well,
when in fact they're not even thinking about you. They don't even know
well,
you exist.
back to your point on like people acting a certain way, and if you had acted that certain way, what it would mean if you had done that. If you're talking to yourself with self-hate and you gave yourself the side eye, it would probably have a whole slew of negative connotation with it. And this is something that I've been thinking about lately, is like, that saying, like, if you assume, it makes an ass out of you and me. And I feel like that the essence of assuming is literally projection. It's literally projection, because it makes an ass out of everybody. You're making an assumption. You're projecting what you're prejudging what a circumstance is. You're assuming. You're making an assumption. It's just going to make an ass out of everybody. And something that I'm like, and back to your point of like, if you're gonna, the self sabotage, if you're thinking negatively about yourself, you assume that everyone else is thinking negatively about you too. And so you're like, how could they do that to me? They wouldn't do that to me unless they thought X, Y, and Z, you know? Ugh.
Yeah,
And so of
when in
course,
fact most people are never thinking about you anyhow.
right, right. I I also, okay, I kind of want to sidetrack here a little bit, because there's also another projection that I hadn't thought of, another I guess, branch of projection. I I was scapegoated growing up in my family. Like if my siblings and I got in a fight, if I got in a fight with a sibling, whether I antagonized them or they antagonized me, if they antagonized me, I was being annoying and disruptive and dramatic. If I antagonized them and they went crying to mom and dad, they weren't being dramatic. It was, oh, Naomi, you started it. You're just starting the contention. So I feel like I was scapegoated, like it was my fault. Whenever there was some kind of battle, it was my fault, right? So not like all the family problems were my fault, but whenever it was me against somebody else, it was my fault. And on the topic of projection, I think as I've looked back on past relationships and friendships, I've kind of realized that because I was kind of put in that role in childhood, and I'm not like some kind of victim, like I'm not saying like poor me, like everyone has childhood shit they've dealt with, like everyone has their past traumas. I'm not like I'm not special. Like I'm special, but I'm not like special, you know. So I I realized that I projected that dynamic onto other people I would be friends with or have relationships with. And so, if there was any kind of argument or disagreement or hurt feelings, regardless of whose feelings were hurt, I apologized and I took fault for all of it because if they if they hurt me, oh, I probably made them hurt me. And if I reacted, if I said, "Oh, I was hurt," and they were frustrated at me expressing my hurt, "Oh, I'm sorry, I shouldn't have said anything. That's just me being dramatic." Like, and I would kind of take on this role of because I took the blame. Sorry, I have too much product in my hair, so I'm like, yeah, it was weird. I did a scrunchy thing today. That's why, if you're watching the video instead of listening to the just the audio of this, you see me like keep scratching my head. I promise it's not lice. It's just,
Makes me
how
want to
that.
scratch my head.
Yeah, now you have lice too. The hypothetical
I got
lice.
lice.
It's contagious. Hypothetical lice is contagious. Now, if you're listening to this, you're also scratching your head right now. Gotcha. Um, so like this whole like taking on this role, I feel like when we're put in these roles, I feel like it can kind of project. So for me, the role was scapegoat. The role was I'm the blame person. I'm the person to blame. And so whenever I would enter into a friendship or relationship, or, boyfriends, friends, and like friend groups, like, gal friends, like whatever it was, I feel like I almost took on this role and not intentionally either. But when you act like it's not this other person's fault and act like it's all your fault, you tend to fess up a lot of things and almost fabricate your own like fault finding within yourself. Um,
Well,
kind of like we,
projection is rarely uh, the choice.
right.
People don't understand that they're projecting, I think, on their own stuff onto someone else. It's there's something about what comes to my mind in this idea of projection is relationships are mirrors. So oftentimes the thing that we see most in a person is the thing that we is actually pointing out to us the thing that we need to change. It's our greatest opportunity for change in ourselves. And instead of seeing it that way, saying, "Hey, what is this? What is this about me? Why does this bother me so much?" Instead, you project it on the other person. I was married for 20 something years, and I know that from myself that I look back on now, I was super uncomfortable with negative emotions. Like if you're upset, you're angry over whatever it is. I'm scared if you start taking it out of me, like legit scared. And I'm not an unconfident. I'm not a guy who's not confident. I'm capable. I'm a pretty good guy. Uh, Stable, emotionally stable. But wow, if you're angry, I felt it was my need. I needed to figure that out, figure it out quick. Like I needed to figure out a way to get you happy. And really, what it was I was afraid to be around those negative emotions. Interestingly, I was afraid to be around those negative emotions in myself. And when I went through very dark time in my life, towards the end of that relationship, I I encountered those negative emotions and I was terrified of those emotions within me. And so it's interesting that this idea of projection, I'm projecting onto you that you need to somehow be happy. Why? Because I'm terrified of not being happy. I'm terrified
Mm.
of being of those negative emotions. So I got to fix them in you because if because I'm so afraid of them in me, I'm thinking that somehow you must be afraid of those things too. And we all got to fix this thing. And so, and then, because I'm, the provider and yada, yada, I must be in charge of fixing this. I'm so good at not feeling these things. I'm so good at dealing with these things. No, I'm really good at shoving them down, not allowing them to be processed.
Build the pressure.
Right, absolutely. And when I had to process, all, deep, dark, you know, ah, scary emotions, I
Mhm.
quite literally thought I was going to die. And uh, turns out that you don't die through that. You're fine. It'll be
You
fine.
can. I think people can die of like a broken heart or like extreme. You can die
Sure,
of psychological trauma. Like you
for
really
sure.
can.
It can go all sorts of haywire, but
Oh yeah.
the point of it is that I was projecting onto somebody else how happy that I
Mhm.
needed to make them happy. I need to fix that, really, because it was me. I needed to be okay with it. And now I'm learning and I'm so much better at just sitting with other people's stuff, because I'm just like, you know what, I don't need to fix this. And maybe I might have a role in
Mhm.
facilitating some sort of healing around it, but I'm not in charge of it. And so I'll sit with you, and we don't even have to resolve it today or tomorrow. It's fine. We'll work it through.
That's awesome. I love that. I love that you have that awareness because it's I how often do we project our fears onto other people? I know something that I struggle with is almost like an OCD tendency because I have ADHD. And so order is my best friend. And I had been minimalistic for a few years and it made me so functional as a human being. I am the only member of my family of 4 that has any capability of being even a little bit minimalistic. It's a bit stressful. And I think I'm terrified of like the lack of function. And I think I almost project that I've had to come up with systems to not project that onto the people around me because it's not that I'm OCD, it's not like I need things to be tidy, but I want to be a functional spouse and mom and I want to make sure that I can be a human being. And I find that extremely hard and so I'm terrified of not being useful to the people who need me, whose needs I am there to fill. Um, Something else like on your point of projecting something you're terrified of, I actually had an experience. Okay, this is something I've had to mull over recently, but it's a decade old. Um, there was a friend of mine. He was a male. Um, he and I were great friends. And it it didn't end well. And it was a great friendship. It didn't end well, and I always assumed it was my fault. I always assumed it was because the typical story, right? The guys and girls can't be friends because X, Y, and Z. It's the whole thing, right? So we were on different wavelengths. I mean, I don't think we weren't on different wavelengths, but with how things went and how things ended up going, there were two different projections, and this came to light recently that there were two different projections. Um, because what was communicated to me throughout our entire friendship is that I was very important to this person and would be in this person's life basically forever, regardless of how things went. And so I thought that that meant we were friends forever, right? Well, um, and he was a very great friend of mine, who really influenced who I am today, as far as like how I value myself, my sense of humor, how I can enjoy like the little things, how I watch out for people. He like literally influenced my life. Like he is probably one of the best friends I've ever had, right? So flash forward to later on, I find out that the things that I thought were my fault, the things that I thought I did wrong, those were not even brought up at all. It was memories that had been tainted. It was because something didn't happen and there was an assumption about me that I didn't value him as a friend. And so I have held him almost on a pedestal as one of the greatest friends I've ever had. And he will always be super important to me. But then on the other hand, um, and I projected that onto him and unprojected also like, oh, this must be why. Like I made assumptions about why there were hurt feelings. And it did have a little bit to do with what I assumed, but it was completely different, right? But I was not in the back. I was not, the projection onto me was different in that the assumption was made that I didn't value that friendship. And so because I thought I was valued, I valued that friendship from a decade ago. And because he thought that he was not valued, he devalued that friendship and trashed it and tainted every single memory he could. And so that came to light recently. And so that's been something that's been very interesting for me to figure out is the projection of when you assume how someone thinks about you, you automatically start to reciprocate that towards them. And I think when it comes to personal relationships, that can self-sabotage personal relationships as well as business relationships. And obviously there's other dynamics there too. Like I'm not going to really get into that, but the point that I really that has been kind of something that I've been digesting as of late has been the fact that like when we assume something about somebody else, when we project um, onto somebody else, we start reciprocating that sentiment onto them. And that can self sabotage. Like, if we think that our boss hates us, then we start feeling mousy around them. We start being like, oh, and we try to get their approval. We come across as desperate. The boss is like, whoa, and then there will be animosity there because we create that dynamic in our heads and project it. And so you look like
Yeah,
you're about to
I
say something.
think so the classical definition of projecting is to take like traits or actions and attribute that are actually ours,
Mm-hmm.
things that we are capable of or are doing, and we ascribe them to someone else.
Mm-hmm.
So if we think of it this way, when someone when someone not convicts us, but when someone what's the word I'm looking for? Like tells us, hey, you know what you're doing such and such, and it's like, no, I'm not.
Diagnosis.
Well, perhaps diagnoses
Yeah.
us with something, or
Critique.
uh,
I don't,
yeah, there's I can't remember. I don't know what the word is,
yeah,
but
but I get what you mean though. Yeah.
when someone says, well, you're yeah, well, you're probably doing such and such, it's only because they know they're capable of it. So if if you didn't know someone was capable of something, if I didn't know I was capable of something, it would be very hard for me to ascribe it to you because I don't even know what it looks like. I don't even know what it is, right? So that's why kids are so naive, and
They're so
you can
trusting.
pull the wool over their eyes because they don't know
Mhm.
anything. They don't know that person's using you. How do you know that? Well, because I've seen it, or worse yet, I've done it. And so the an adult looks at situations with a totally different viewpoint than a child does because they are, the child just doesn't have the life experience to understand the nuances of all of these situations.
Mhm.
and they would never, and a child wouldn't come up with some idea in their mind that they don't understand, that didn't happen, right? People come
Mhm.
up with ideas in their minds that they have seen or that they have done, these traits or something like that. So the 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 thing that comes to my mind in this is many times what I see in when you talk about sabotage is a result of escalation. So fractures happen all the damn time in relationships,
Mhm.
all the time.
Mhm.
And there when there's a breach in a relationship, we built this wall around the relationship and now there's a breach. You can go fix that breach. However, if you get into a pissing match of who caused the breach, you don't fix the breach. Instead, you
Right.
begin to create new ones. You widen that breach until now all of a sudden it's this point of, like you talked about, sabotage. Sabotaging, I think, happens in that escalation process. And it usually happens because of defensiveness, in my opinion.
Wait,
Someone
hold on.
says, someone says, you did such and such. That's
Mhm.
projection. You have no idea what I did or why I did it because you didn't ask.
Mhm.
Then you defend yourself and say, no, I didn't because you did such and such. And I know why you did it. No, you don't. You have no idea. You know why you have done it. And you might even be doing the same. You might even be doing it actively right now. Well, I did. Well, you did that, and you did also escalate, escalate, escalate,
Yeah.
escalate. And what you're doing is you're taking that wall, and you're just like, oh yeah, you created a hole. Ha! Look at that hole that you created last month that we never resolved. Oh yeah, well look at that hole that you created over there. But you created that hole. That, and all of a sudden
It
you're
gets
tearing down
petty.
the whole wall, and
So
it
petty.
becomes petty because nobody took the time to go. Wait a second, I don't need to defend myself. You feel what you feel. Okay. I'm not in charge. I'm not in charge of your feelings. I am in charge of my actions. I'm in charge of my traits. And you could be like, you know what? You're right. If the tables are turned, I might be annoyed by that trait as well. I don't need to attack you for it and turn you into the villain because all right, who is here? Who here is without fault? So you caused the breach today. Fine. I'm going to need to learn how to repair that well because I'm going to cause the breach tomorrow. Like, and I'm going to need you to help me repair it. So
Right.
I think that what projection oftentimes, if we're there's, I think we're using projection in sort of a broad circumstance. The classical
Multiple
thing is,
facets. Yeah.
yeah, the classical thing in projection is, I mean, one of the examples is if you start to say, oh, I know, you're hiding your phone because you're you're hiding your phone because I know you're talking to some guy.
Takes one to know one.
Right. Exactly. It's like, oh, that's because I've hidden my phone because I was talking to some girl.
Whoever smelt
That's
it dealt it.
projection.
All of it.
Exactly. That's
All of
projection.
it.
And
Yep.
instead of digging deep and going, you know what? All right. Well, what do I need to change about myself, and why is this so important to me? There's the there is where you can stop escalation. You can stop sabotage. You can go, why? Why does this bother me? Because it's
Mhm.
all about me. It's nothing to do with the other person. The other person is a gift in my life, so I can see the things that I need to change. I either need to develop a quality that I don't yet have so I can deal with this, or I need to get rid of a quality that I do have which isn't helping me.
Yeah. Marie Kondo those qualities.
You do. I
Get them
love
out of
that.
there.
You said that earlier today in the workshop. In the
Yeah.
workshop, Marie Kondo them. What is you I think the Marie Kondo thing was like get rid of what doesn't bring you joy.
Yeah. But
I
like
think
you gotta do
I
it what doesn't except do it with growth, not joy. What doesn't bring you growth. Positive growth.
I think if we tie all of these discussions together and
Mhm.
the workshop discussion too, what do you want your future self to be? Who is that person? What are those qualities? Marie Kondo yourself into that.
I was thinking about that the other day. I was literally thinking about that the other day. I was thinking about, I mean, not trying to pick on you here. I know it's been a hot minute since you were in high school, but when,
It's true.
how like when you were growing up, was there ever somebody that you wanted to be friends with but didn't really run in your circles? And you kind of like there was this cool kid. I don't know if it is the same for guys, but for girls at least, there's always this I don't even remember who it was at this point. I do remember like multiple different girls that it was like that it could have been. There were always some people that I wanted to be friends with. The cool girl who was just so effortlessly herself, comfortable in her skin. And I had this thought the other day that I want to do everything in my power to become the person that I've always wanted to be best friends with. I want to become the person that I just want to be best friends with, because we are our own best friend and we are our own worst enemy. And if we're doing everything to become the person that we'd want to be best friends with, then we run out of ways to be our own worst enemy, because we're working so hard to have our own best interest at heart so we can better show up for the people around us.
Yeah, I think I think everybody has the opportunity to talk to themselves a little bit nicer.
Yeah. Yeah. A
I
little.
fortunately I actually had a discussion very recently with somebody, and I said, and I was very serious. I was like, you know what? If I listen to the negative voice in my head, you wouldn't be here. We would not be having this discussion, because the negative voice in my head can take me to places where it's just like, you know what? You're better off alone. You should be alone. You that I mean that's Nobody cares about you, Jace. Nobody knows you, and even if they did, they'd think you're too much, or you're too little, or you're too aloof, you're too serious, you're too this, you're too that. Why? Because that the voice
People
in
mistake
my
you for serious.
quit it. I had, even Paul the other day, I got on a roll on a call that we were on,
Uh-huh.
uh, and it was with Kachina. He was introducing me to Kachina, and my brain started going a million miles an hour. And
Oh no, did you blank out the
no, I didn't blank out.
stone face?
I went hardcore for a while, just like um,
Oh.
cold calculate, not cold and
Yeah, but
calculating,
like rigid
but
almost.
I don't know if it was that, but the Paul's comment at the end, we got off that call, and I was energized by the call. I could see a million opportunities, and I did what I do best. And Paul got at the end of that call, and he called me back, and he's like, "Hey, I just wanted to digest the call with you, like he does. He does a great job at it."
Mhm.
And he said, "You kind of, I really for a while, just felt like you were kind of steamrolling me there." Um, I and he says, which is fine. I mean, your brain. He says, I get in these situations with you. Your brain moves so fast, and you are here 1 second, and you're over there the next second, then you're onto this other. You're making connections, and he says, my brain just doesn't move that fast. You've wrapped up all these connections, and I said, I know, Paul, and I said, and I never want to do. I said, I never want you to feel like somehow that's personal or anything. I said, because I have at times not shown up as my best self in like with my best skills, because I'm so afraid that I'm going to roll over somebody else and they're going to feel like whatever. And I said, so sometimes I have to slow myself down deliberately in that moment and be like, I'm not going to say anything. I don't bring sometimes my thoughts to the table because I've edited them out, because I've moved through the whole thing, and I've learned to um I've learned to allow space, and then I'm trying, and I've learned to, I'm sometimes I for what if I think the moment needs it and I'm at the table, I'm gonna burn through all the stuff that I think I need to burn through, and if it rolls over some people, it rolls over some people. It's the way it is. It's not personal. I can't help it that my brain maybe moves faster than others. That's fine. It doesn't mean I'm not terrible at other things. And it doesn't mean somebody else around this table isn't much better at other things than me. It's not personal, right? But I projected onto them perhaps the fact that maybe they're upset with me. Why? Because there have been times that sitting at tables I've been upset with somebody else. I mean, like, ugh, why didn't you just shut up?
Do you feel like you've been upset with yourself? Like, have you ever gotten out of those situations and just like been upset with yourself? Do you feel, because this is something that I think that I project on, well, I have experienced it before though. I have experienced people telling me that I'm too much, which I'd rather be too much than have anyone think that I don't care. So I'll gladly take the title of overbearing or overdramatic or, overwhelming. But I kind of, on your point of the self hate dialogue, I consider myself a confident person, but after conversations, a lot of the time I'm like, that was a bit much. And I'm like hating on myself and I'm angry at myself, like, oh, why didn't I just shut up in that moment? Why did I say that? Why did I overshare again? Why did I, like, oh no, what if they feel like I threw them under the bus? What if they feel like what if they feel like I thought little of them? What if they think that, like, do you do that too? Like, do you feel like, do you
I, I
do you worry like that? Like, how does your worry voice sound, I guess? How does your projection voice, like your intrusive projection voice, your thoughts into like,
my worry voice used to be related to the idea that I was in charge of all of these things. And if I could figure it out to do it best, then, everybody
it was
goes
your
home
job?
most happy and everything's accomplished in quote unquote the best way. My worry voice now at 45, 46 years old, having done a lot in my life and spent at least a handful of years doing some very deep introspective work and having, I think, maybe the gift of being able to see into other people's lives. Not everybody has that. Like I'm the guy that people go to and have discussions with and that type of stuff. So I get a glimpse into everybody else's processing and I sort of push into that in ways that other people don't maybe do. I don't know. Um, my worry now isn't worry. I'm not worried about it because it turns out I'm not even in charge of it. The times, and here's why. I've done a lot of performance, a lot of musical performance, and I'm good. I'm a good singer. I'll stand up. I'm the singer that, I mean, this is stupid, but I'll
I
stand up in
did say
karaoke.
two-time Grammy winner.
Yeah, that didn't happen. But I'm the person who, I like doing karaoke just because it's
Mhm.
fun. It gets me out of the house, and I don't do it all the time. But I'm the guy that too often, it happens every night actually. Anytime I go karaoke, a couple things happen. Number one, there's always somebody who comes up to me and asks if I'm married. That always, almost every night. Another thing happens. Somebody else who wanted to sing comes up to me like, I'm not going to follow that. I don't want to sing now. And I go, and I think, right. I could go, damn it. I ruined everybody's night because I'm a good singer. But then I think I'm not in charge of that. What I am in charge is using whatever gift I have, and I'm not an asshole about it. Like I will 100%. I have people come up, hey, will you do a duet with me? 100%, absolutely. I had some person come up to me and go, I'm not sure. Do you know this song? Like I don't really know this song. Could you sing it with me? Yeah, I sing it. And you know what I do? I step back and I start and I'll sing it sometimes like a little loud with them so they get the tune and they know and they feel like I'm there. And then all of a sudden I'll be like a little bit quieter and
Mhm.
I'm just like, and I will step back and I will be like, hey, and shove them into the
Take it.
limelight. Yeah,
It's your
for
it's your
sure.
spotlight now. Yeah.
Because if you need to borrow my courage for a moment, fine. That's awesome. Do it. I don't care. Like, why else am I here? I'm gonna do a good job. When people say, hey, do you know this song? And I really don't know it and I know I'm gonna butcher it, I will not sing it. 100%. I will not sing it. I will 100% tell you no, because the last thing I'm going to do is go up there and sing a song I don't know and sound half assed. Why? Because for me, I'm not going to do that. I
Mhm.
won't do it. Other people, you're welcome to. I don't care. So the worry that I used to carry around with me that somehow it actually took me out of situations where I could have brought joy. Actually, it took me out of situations where I would have had joy. And uh is it Taylor Swift? The haters gonna hate, 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 hate.
Oh yeah.
The
Oh yeah.
haters
That's my
gonna hate,
homegirl.
hate, hate.
For sure. For
Right?
sure. For sure.
It's true. The haters are gonna hate, and
Mhm.
let them. Who
They're
cares?
gonna.
You're not in charge of that. And the and also on the idea of performance, there were times that I thought that, yeah, I used to do a lot of preaching too, and I and I
Oh,
would
you still do.
or give a that's probably true in different ways, right? And I would. I would give a talk and I would be like, this is the worst possible talk ever. I am embarrassed that I opened my mouth. Nothing makes sense. I hate this.
And then people would
And I
come up
wanted
to
to,
you after and tell you how much it
exactly.
meant.
I
Yep.
wanted to slink out the back and be like, I'm going to go home and never open the door for
Yep.
anyone. And they're just
Yep.
like, that was amazing. And you changed my life. And it's just like,
Yeah.
okay.
I had
But
that.
what it would do for me in those moments is I would go, I don't believe you. That's what I said. The voice in my head would say, don't believe that. Don't believe that. Don't believe that. Don't believe that. And I had to actively quiet that voice and say,
Right.
I don't know who's saying that.
Tie it up, throw it
I'm
in the
gonna take
trunk.
I'm gonna take people at their word. I'm
Yep.
gonna take it at their word. And it impacts me. If you want to hear negative self-talk, the thing that impacts me most today is when somebody says, I really love you, I really care about you, I'm gonna, I think you're great, I think you're amazing. I'm
Mhm.
like, that's not true. They are lying to you all the time. Every single one of those people, they're lying to you. They don't mean it. It's not gonna stick.
For me, it's
That
imposter syndrome. I feel like I don't deserve it.
it is I
Yeah.
don't deserve it. That's the
Yeah.
somewhere down deep, right? I project onto them and I go, well, you know what they're doing? They're just telling you what they because they want to be nice. Why? Because
Right.
I've done that. I've certainly told people, hey, great job, because I wanted to be nice.
Right. I literally I had an experience like that the other day, not the other day. Well, a couple months ago. I stood up. It was my turn to give a talk in church, and I brought one of my Rubik's cubes, a 12-sided one, as a little demonstration, and I was going to solve it while I was talking. It didn't happen, but I owned it. I was like, I was going to solve this while I was talking, and then like it was. I wanted it to be an object lesson of sorts because it's how like we become like Christ. That's what I was speaking on, and how it's like little by little, step by step. This looks impossible. One of our church leaders, as I stood up, he's like, "Oh my gosh, that scares me." And I was like, "What did you say?" He's like, "That scares me." He's like, "Exactly. When we look at becoming perfect like Christ, it scares the hell out of us because how are we going to just like be perfect? But it doesn't happen all at once. You learn the steps to solve a Rubik's cube first, just a 3x3, maybe a 4x4 if you want to get crazy, a 12 side. Like it's steps. It's an algorithm. You learn it little by little, and when you know all the steps, it's easy to solve. And I was going to demonstrate that, but then I was like, but I can't talk and solve at the same time, so I put it down and I kept talking. Um, and honestly, I was blacked out the entire time, like because I don't like talking off of a list. I don't like talking off of. I prepare by like thinking about the topic I'm going to talk about and praying about it, and then I get up and I'm like, okay, God, Jesus, take the wheel. You do your thing. Hopefully, like, I just pray that someone's going to hear this and have some kind of new thought that hadn't occurred to them before that will help maybe bring them closer to you. That's literally it. I blacked out. I feel like I botched it. I said everything I had in the 15 minutes that I was given. I was given the long section of 15 minutes. I said everything that I needed to say that I had planned to say in the first 3 minutes and figured out how to fill the time. I felt like I was literally just blacked out. And I really love what you said earlier about how you'll kind of like step back and kind of like let people shine. Something that I do is when it comes to like faith situations, first of all, I'll trust God. And I like to, so I'll trust him and I'll be like, hey, you know what? I'll prepare as much as I can and I'll trust you. But on top of that, if I don't have confidence in myself, but he has confidence in me, I'm gonna be like, okay, obviously you see something in me I don't. I'm gonna trust that. I'm gonna piggyback off of that. And then when other people need encouragement, I'm like, I know you're in a dark place right now. I know you don't believe in yourself right now. I'll tell you, I believe in you. If you need to piggyback off of my encouragement, do it. I will be there. I will be your cheerleader. If you need somebody, do it. Like I will hold that for you as long as you need me to. But then I'm gonna back off because you need to learn how to do it on your own. You need to learn how to shine. You need to learn how to own your value and own that like completely. So I really love what you said there. And going back to that, what you said about the whole and like just getting in the argument about whose fault it was. um, Recently, I read a book, The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck. Great book, lots of great insights, and something that really, really hit me that I had thought of before, but I hadn't conceptualized it like it was in the book. Fault versus responsibility. It doesn't matter whose fault it was that the hole was made. What matters is it's both people's responsibility to mend the hole, or it will get bigger and the relationship will suffer. It
That
takes two people to mend it.
yeah, and that's where there's a significant level of maturity that's required to be able to keep an eye on what matters,
Mm-hmm.
and it is emotional maturity. Emotional maturity is extremely important because the wave of emotions too often makes the situation about me.
Mm-hmm.
But emotions are just an indicator that something is there. It doesn't say what's there.
It doesn't say it's wrong.
They're not always even they're
Mm-hmm.
not even always true.
Mm-hmm.
Emotions are based on experience. And if we've had experiences that, back to your point of like these things that have happened in our childhood, experiences that we've never processed, never resolved, we're likely to have an emotion that isn't actually derived from the present circumstance. It's
Could be a past
it's
trauma,
programmed
past
from
programming.
something that we programmed many, many years ago that we didn't ever think, maybe this isn't true. So one of the one of the greatest opportunities we have, if we go back to relationships, one of the greatest opportunities we have is to look at the emotions and go, all right, I'm feeling that, but I'm going to let that wave pass because I know the wave's going to pass. What's now the priority? What's the greatest value? What do I, from a principle standpoint, what's the thing I'm actually trying to achieve here? And that's where, like, to your point, if there's a breach in relationship, if the whole point, if my greatest value is to repair that breach, then I can I don't have to address all these other things necessarily. Maybe they don't even matter. Like, I know that for me, being a little bit older now, and my kids are, grown. um I have a lot more patience with all sorts of things, um particularly related to kids, because it turns out like most of that stuff is just water under the bridge anyhow. It doesn't need to be corrected. It's not like there are certain principles
Right.
that I work towards, but in the end, it's just like, do it. A lot of this stuff really, it doesn't matter. It's like when I grew up, as I was growing up, I should stop saying when I grew up because have not yet grown up.
Yeah, I'm
But
like,
the
what?
I
You
know,
did? When?
yeah.
Was it in this
Well,
conversation? Because I didn't see it. I
when I was
couldn't.
young, I grew up in this, in church, and a
Mhm.
big church, and you could run. I mean, it was massive, and it had this courtyard in the middle, and you could
Mhm.
run around the outside, around the hallways, right?
Mhm.
And the older folks at the time would yell at us kids, "Stop running in church!" Who made the rules? Who made the rule that you can't run in church?
The crotchety old people.
I somebody somewhere.
Mhm.
Somebody somewhere started it, and then everybody else was like, "Don't run in church." Why? Because it's like what, disrupting your feng shui? Because what, Jesus doesn't like kids who run? What's the what pinpoint for me? Oh, it's disrespectful. Cool. Can you define respect for me? Well, it's doing what other people tell you to do. How
Well, I
far does
do think
that
there's
go?
something to be said for
Right?
like reverence, but at the same time, like
But
for
reverence
us,
for
it's
what?
like
Because
there's like in our
our
chapel, we don't run in the chapel, but like the kids are all
yeah,
running around
right.
after church,
Yeah.
and it's
You don't
my kids
laugh.
who are the
You
loudest.
don't
And I'm
laugh
like,
at funerals. I mean, there are certain, think of these
laughter is
things
the
that we
first reaction of discomfort, so it's actually good
well,
to laugh at a
think of these
funeral.
things think of these rules that we build up around each other and we enforce on one another, that actually, if in the
Mhm.
end it doesn't matter, because you know what,
Right.
if I can guarantee you that some of these people may have lost children.
Right.
The hundreds of people that were in that church, somebody somewhere lost a child, and I guarantee you that same person who's barking at me or some other person, "Hey, don't run in church." If they could have their kid back and see their kid running in church, they would have a difference. They would 100% be like, "I would give anything. I would totally let my kid run in church if I could just have him back."
Mm,
So
right.
these rules that we make, These things that we bicker over, these things that we
It
project
doesn't
onto one another,
matter. It's
doesn't
not make
matter.
or
None
break.
of it
It's not
matters.
make or break. Yeah. Like I've kind of like I've tried to be less with my 7-year-old. I've kind of let things, instead of being like, "Oh no, you shouldn't do that. Oh no, that's not nice. Oh, you need to be more respectful. Oh, you need," like, I've started to be more like, doesn't matter. He's not being disrespectful. He might be being disruptive, but he's not disrespect anybody. And most people think he's really funny because he's a really funny kid. He's a really funny, charismatic kid. He's a designated greeter everywhere we go. I know you have a hard stop in a second, so don't feel like you have to stick around for. I'll probably let you go and finish off, but
Got a
you,
dog who's
Jeff.
like,
I'm glad that he wasn't what happened to your lava lamp. Um, but yeah, I've kind of been more just like, you know what, I've let it kind of just ride. Because a lot of those things that stressed me out, like I don't want people to feel disrespected by me or unloved by me. But when it comes to a 7-year-old, the things that he does, the things that he's exploring with how he explores the world, um, I'm not going to apologize for that, and I'm not going to suppress that to make other people more comfortable or to appease other people in their opinions, because
yeah.
that's crap, and I refuse. So, yeah, I love that.
All right. Well, wrapping it up. I don't know if do you want to continue?
I'll probably continue. I'll probably just let you go and just like kind of do a thing or something. I don't know.
Awesome. Well,
I'll wing it.
I think it's a great topic, because it is this idea of projection. It limits us. It limits our capabilities
Hmm.
because it limits our ability to change. A person can change. What's the saying? A person will change to the point that they can recognize and accept the truth about themselves, because we will not change what we cannot see. And when we're so intent on not seeing the truth about ourselves and we're having to make it all about you, we can't change it. So if you really want to become the best self, to show up for yourself and with others, you have to stop projecting onto other people. Let it ride for a little bit. It's all about you anyhow. And once you figure out it's all about you, you can figure out what you will or won't accept. And then other people can shift around that or not. And you'll develop, I think, some patience. You'll develop some grace, because sometimes you're a rat bastard. It's fine. So get grace. Give grace. You're going to need grace. Somebody
Right.
breached the wall today in our relationship. All right, fine.
Hmm.
It happens. You're going to do it sometime too. And how do you want to resolve that? And what maybe it's because of your bad behavior. All right. Well, are you willing to change it? Because if it's about the other person, and somehow I think we're just glorifying ourselves, and that is a you're a spiritual person,
Hmm.
and so if you read your Bible, there's one thing that the Bible never says is follow your heart. It never says it.
Right.
Why? What it does, it says your heart is deceitful.
Well, in Fire, have you ever seen Fireproof?
I've not seen it, but I know
It's a,
about it. Yes.
it's a really, there's a the friend in Fireproof. He super glues. He warns his bet. I don't think it's a super glue scene, but that didn't have to do with the super glue. But he says, "Do not follow your heart. Do not trust your heart because your heart can be deceived. You need to
Yeah.
lead your heart."
Which is also the idea of take every thought into captivity. Not everything is here to serve you. Even the
Mhm.
thoughts in your head, it's not here to serve you necessarily. It's
They're called in.
information, and it might need to go away, which is why we
Mhm.
dwell on certain things. You want to change your mind, you want to change your life, you got to dwell on certain things. You got to dwell on noble things. You want to dwell on good things. You want to dwell on beautiful things. Why? Because you will be dwelling on something. Your brain will be taking up space, processing something. You got
Mhm.
to give it good things. Otherwise, it will be filled with all the other stuff around you and the negative things, and you're going to make it about everybody else. And then you will sabotage all the good things that you could have in your life. That's just what we do.
Yep. Projection, negative projection leads to self sabotage. So don't project.
Well, thank you, Naomi.
Yeah.
Thanks for
Thank you
having
so
me. I
much for being here. I really appreciate you coming on and joining and participating in the conversation. You're awesome.
appreciate you asking. You go through great topics, and I love to explore them with you.
All right. Thank you. All right. We'll talk to you later. I loved what he was saying about what he just barely said. I was going to add on to it, and I'm totally blanking right now. Projection, self-sabotage. I gotta lead myself back into it real quick. Oh, positive thoughts. We have to make sure that we are full of positive thoughts and full of good influences. We become we become a result of the average of the 5 people we spend the most time around. Um, so because we have social media, and we all have social media at our fingertips, we all have that on our phones. A discussion that I had with my friends recently is about how social media is it can be negative and it can be a really negative impact. But taking on the fact how much time we spend with social media on the internet, with the phones, like we are consumers as a society, we are consumers, right? So not only do we need to make sure we're fueling positive things, fueling empowering things, self reflective things, we also need to make sure the people who are around us have a positive influence on us, as well as the media we're consuming. Um, I count my phone as one of the 5 people. I do that because it helps me take it seriously what I'm consuming on my phone. And with that, I've actually, in order to help my mind project a more positively influential atmosphere. I have gone through and when I see content that is uplifting or positive for me, or empowering, or just stupid funny, because sometimes you really need that too. I will go to the account, and if they have more stuff that aligns with that content, the stuff that is edifying or brings me joy or is empowering to me, I follow them. And so that way my feed is full of that content. And sometimes if I just need like a brain break or I need to just diffuse my day, I'll spend 10 minutes or more, because sometimes the rabbit hole is a rabbit holey. And I'll do that, and it's almost like a meditation without having to do the meditation. It's like a cheap meditation because it can kind of pull you out of the crabby attitude or crabby mood you're in and just kind of throw you into a different mindset, a different perspective. Um, it's really important to not just be self reflective and to avoid projection, but to be very, very mindful of the influence of the things around you. And be very, very mindful of why. If you react in a certain way and come away from that situation and say, if you're thinking something is somebody else's fault and you're honing in on it being their fault and honing in on hurt feelings, that's a good trigger for you to be like, why am I feeling so upset by this? Do some self reflection. Think about some possible, I don't know, projection in that circumstance and see if there's anything that needs to be resolved and can help you come at it from a more positive angle. Thank you so much for hearing me out. I'm so glad you guys got to hang out with Jason too. I really appreciate you guys being here and hearing me out. And thanks to Jason for being here as well. And I'll see you guys next time.